without further ado, a warm welcome for Miss Anya.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Gotta get this down for, short people like me. But thank you for having me today. I appreciate you guys and Miles and Izzy thinking of me and letting me come to you guys and speak about my story and the story of my sister and kind of what the Empowerment Project is all about. So to take you back a little bit, so in 1989, so I am a Solano County native. I was born and raised in Fairfield, but been in Vacaville for 26 plus years. So this is my home, my family, Solano County. Grew up here. My sister, in 1989, tragedy hit our family, and my sister Debbie, who was 24 years at the time, she was in an emotionally and verbally, mentally abusive relationship, and she didn't realize it until, unfortunately, it was too late. Our family, we didn't realize it as well, or her friends, but there were signs that, you hear the saying, hindsight is 20/20. And so we look back now and realize she was in an abuse relationship, and unfortunately, we didn't know, and neither did her friends. So she was dating this man. His name was John. They were dating for about 6 months, and he was very emotionally and verbally, mentally abusive to her, never physically harmed her, but she got the strength and realized the type of relationship she was in and wanted to get out of the relationship. At that time, my family's from here, born and raised Fairfield. She was living in Redwood City and when this happened. And if you guys all remember, and I'm sure you do, the huge earthquake that we had in 1989, that happened on a Thursday, and my sister lost her life that Sunday. And so she was packing up her stuff and going back and forth. They lived in an apartment in Redwood City, and as she was getting ready to leave, he was actually a United airline mechanic in San Francisco. He came home, saw her packing up and leaving, and he happened to have a gun, went inside, got the gun, shot my sister. And then he is also from Fairfield. His family's from here as well. So after he shot her, he called his friend, and they left my sister in Redwood City and then drove to Fairfield to his mother's house. He picked up a transmission and some tarp. He then, him and his friend went back to the apartment, wrapped my sister up in tarp, put a transmission, and threw her over the San Mateo Bridge. And some fishermen found her about 7 days later. So he called another friend and to help him get rid of her belongings, and that friend said absolutely not and called the police. A few days later, he did get arrested in San Francisco at United Airlines, and so he went through trial. So at this time in 1989, I was 14, so she was my big sister. We're 10 years apart, and so I wasn't able to go to the trial because I was a minor. So they went the whole trial. He did get convicted of second-degree murder. He got 24 years to life. Unfortunately, in 2018, he served 27 years and was released. He was here in Vacaville for quite a few years. So, as I grew up, and tragedy happens, you kind of course, we were wondering what happened. Why did he do this? He supposedly he didn't have any criminal background. He supposedly, his mom and dad were together. He grew up in a good home. So we couldn't figure out why he did this. So time went on. I went to high school. I got married. I had kids. And then when I was 25 years old, he had his first parole hearing. And if you've ever been at a parole hearing, hopefully you guys have not, but it's a very intimate setting, and John was sitting very close to us. It was usually myself, my mom, and my dad, and you have to relive what happened. So this at 25 years old, and when this happened when I was 14, I didn't know a lot because, again, I wasn't able to go to trial. So I learned a lot at that parole hearing, and he had, fortunately, we had to go through 10 of these parole hearings until 2018 when he got out. But as the years went on and I kept going to these parole hearings, again, he couldn't explain why he killed my sister. He just said he had a gun and he got mad and it happened. And but I knew there was something more and something deeper. And so as I was, older and going through this parole hearing and looking at these trial transcripts, there's a lot of things that were said, and some things that you look back now and signs that we didn't realize that we could have helped and or we could have seen maybe for her, or so some of the things that we look back now is one of the huge indicators of somebody being in an abusive relationship is isolation. And that's something definitely that he did, because he never wanted to be around my parents. He kind of isolated her from her friends. She was living here. He got her to move all the way to Redwood City. She actually had 2 small children at the time from a previous marriage with her and her high school sweetheart. And so he convinced her, got in her mind and made this okay in her mind to leave her kids with their dad and move all the way to Redwood City. There's other things that, like her friends testified, that he was very controlling. Of course, in 1989, we didn't have cell phones and stuff like that. But they would testify that he would follow them to wherever they went and would show up, uninvited. Other things that he would do is not let her wear nail polish. He said it's too sexy. So some of these things, looking back, after reading the trial transcripts and hearing, reliving what happened, I realized that she was in an abusive relationship. And so, something as I got older, my kids started getting older. My daughter went to Vaca High, and she had a class in 9th grade called health class. And when I was in high school, we didn't have health class. And so I was really curious as, what do they teach in that class? And she said stuff like bullying and healthy eating and drug abuse. And so I was like, do they talk about like relationships? And she said, no, not really. It wasn't a topic of discussion. And so that's kind of when a light bulb went in or on. And I realized, like, I wonder, the type of relationship, my sister was so young at 24 years old. I wonder, how young this actually starts, abusive relationships and what are our kids seeing? And I found out that every year about 10 million kids see some type of abusive relationship in their home. And 1 in 3 adolescents between the ages of 11 and 24 have said they've been in an abusive relationship or in a healthy relationship. And I thought that was like huge, and especially starting at a young age of 11. So I know you hear the words, stop the cycle. We want to stop the cycle of domestic violence, right? So how do we do that? And that's one thing that I've been on boards and helped with local domestic violence organizations, and there's some great ones in every county. But they are focused on being reactive, right? So they have the shelters and they have restraining orders and therapy and help in that aspect. Whereas I wanted to do something that we could be proactive and figure out how do we really, really stop this. And so I was at a domestic violence event one year, and I was I ran into Jim Frazier, who is our assembly member. He's not assembly member anymore, but back in 2016 he was. And I met him and I said, you know what, I really would love to have some type of education in our public school system. And I would love to have maybe teach healthy and unhealthy relationships for our young people so they can see kind of the types of abuse and what are the warning signs. And so, and nowadays too, I mean, you guys know, and having kids, you know, with social media, that's just a whole other layer that our children have to deal with now than something my sister didn't at the time, but it's just another layer. And so he thought it was a great idea, and he said, you know, propose it to my office. In January, we gather all the proposals for bills and decide which one we would like to take on and run with. And so I had to do some research because I wasn't sure if there was any legislation like this, you know, already, and kind of what that looked like. So did a lot of research. I proposed that, like I said, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew I wanted some type of education in our school system. And I wanted that, and I wanted the teachers to be our platform because of the children that are seeing this in their home and growing up with it. That's their world. That's all they know. That's all they see. So they think that's normal. And so if somebody else couldn't get to them, maybe this education could. So I proposed the bill, ran with it, got a lot of support. They said, we want to take your bill on. Jim Frazier was absolutely great. He let me run and be involved as much as I could, how much I wanted to, because I was warned that, you know, sometimes when you maybe propose a bill that they might kind of take it and kind of run it themselves and kind of take all the credit for it and stuff. So I was very grateful that he let me participate in this bill. And so I got a lot of support, some amazing people. And in 2017, I proposed it in January. It went through the Assembly side. There's committees on the Assembly side and the Senate side. Flew through the Assembly side, no problems. Got to the Senate side, and it got stuck in one of the committees. And the committee that was opposing my bill was the Right to Life, California Right to Life. And come to find out, it was just a political, you know, thing. And so, but it was okay because Jim Frazier called me up and he said, you know what, Sonia, this organization's opposing your bill. We want to get it past this committee. Do you mind coming in and speaking on the Senate floor in the Capitol? And I said, absolutely. And scared to death, of course. But I'm glad they opposed it because who can say they spoke on the Assembly floor, you know, as the Senate floor, actually at the Capitol. So I spoke to them, told them my sister's story and the reason why I think this would be an amazing thing that our kids can get in school, and it passed. In fact, that organization, the Right to Life, didn't even show up. So, but that's all right. So it got passed through all the committees on the Senate side, and then on October 17th in 2017, Brown signed it into law. So what that means is what we did is we amended the health code. And so now in health class, the teachers are required to give education a certain amount of hours to teach about healthy and unhealthy relationships. And so that is in our public schools in California. So that was my first goal, was doing that. And my second goal was to start an organization, and that's where the Empowerment Project comes into play. And so I wanted to, of course, I use the teachers as a platform, but we can't expect our teachers to teach everything, right? So I wanted to develop an organization that is based around education, empowering people through education. And we do this in two ways. One is we want to try to talk to and help young people between the ages of 11 and 24. And we will go into schools, youth organizations, churches, anywhere that we can speak to young people. And we go in and do an interactive 1-hour workshop. And this workshop teaches them about the types of abuse and the warning signs. And we want them to understand the difference. And for example, because this is kind of one that we could all relate to, is like jealousy. Of course, we're human. We're all going to be jealous in one aspect or another. But when does it become, when is it healthy? And when is it unhealthy? And when is it become abusive behavior? So we want to teach them, those, how to recognize that. And so that is one side of my organization. The other side is I am a trainer with the Professional Beauty Association through a program called Cut It Out. And what we do is I go into salons and I do an hour workshop for their hairstylists. Because a lot of times our hairstylists are our confidants. Sometimes they're seeing abuse happen with hair being pulled out or bruises or just them talking or saying certain things. So we go in and we teach them how to recognize it, how to respond to victims, and how to provide them with resources. So we provide local and national resources for them. And we put up signs and posters and stuff in the salon. So again, it's all around education and and talking about. I think Jerry and I were talking earlier and about how we just need to talk. We just need to teach. Education is key. And then when we're silent, then domestic violence, an intimate partner, sex trafficking, all these things, bullying, they strive when we don't say anything. So that is, the Empowerment Project and kind of how, it started and how I got here. And I did leave some brochures on your table, and it kind of just talks about our 2 workshops. And it also has my website on there, my information. Like John said, we just had our 2nd annual gala, which was super, super fun. Izzy, she actually was one of my guest speakers for my first gala, and then we brought her back again last year because, how old were you when I met you, Izzy? Like, how old was I how old were you when I met you? You were a teenager.
My abuse was happening from ages roughly 16 to 18. I think I met you when I was 17.
Yeah, I was going to say it had to be probably 16 or 17. So she was in a small group at my neighbor's house, and it's a girls group. And my neighbor Angela asked me to come in and just talk to the girls and about dating abuse, and that's where I met Izzy. And she actually went to school with my son as well. But and I didn't know at the time she was in an abusive relationship. And it wasn't until right before our first gala, so it was years later, where my neighbor said, Izzy was in a relationship, abusive relationship, and you really touched her. You really, what you talked about, she realized that she was in this abusive relationship and got out of it. And I was just so proud of her, for doing that. And so we did a video with her at our first gala, and everybody was really touched by it. And then, like I said, we brought her back, and I got to meet Miles, and so happy that they're in this great relationship now, and so happy for her. But, she's just, one of those things, and this is exactly why I do what I do, and I was so happy she, what was said and what I said that day helped in an aspect of your life, and you were able to get out of that relationship, and that's really the goal. And with my sister not being here, I'm her voice, and so my hope is when somebody hears this education, or I wish that my sister would have got this education, or even John, who was the abuser, got this education, to maybe where he can realize, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I shouldn't be treating her this way, or these are some things maybe I need to be aware of. So it's not only for just the victims, but for abusers that may not even know that they are being abusive to their boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. So yeah, that is my story, and I wanted to at least open it up. I didn't want to take too much of your guys' time, but wanted to open up for some questions. And no questions off limits, so any questions, I'm here to answer.
Disclaimer, not this John, so you guys know.
Thanks, Thomas.
So do your presentations really kind of, do you feel like they really affect the abuser if the abuser hears your presentation?
I think they can, yeah, no, absolutely. I think because something, especially with social media now, that it becomes normal, I think, especially for our young people, on a certain way that maybe somebody's talking to them or being disrespectful or, like I said, with the jealousy thing, there's our children, I mean, even us, we're seeing it, and we don't want it to become normal. So we want to, try to intervene there and put that in their head, like, this isn't normal behavior, this is unhealthy. Hopefully that you can, somebody can change when they hear that.
Did you ever find the pathology of John, what his issues were? You said he came from a good family, and it was surprising, so what was his pathology? That's a tough one, because we really don't know. I mean, abuse, especially with intimate partner abuse, comes down to power and control. And, he, like I said, he wasn't a criminal. He supposedly his family, he didn't grow up in an abusive home. So we really, to this day, don't understand, why he did it, except, again, he may have had just a controlling, behavior. Yeah.
Yes. In your classes, the kids 11 to 22, whatever, there's different types of abuse. There's emotional abuse, mental, and psychic, and not necessarily has to be physical. But a female can really have something, really have an impact on how a male.
Yeah.
So in your classes, both male and female understanding when they say, okay, I'm leaving,
Right.
versus any kind of physical.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because this would go either way, and you're absolutely right. It's statistically, yes, women are usually seen to be majority of victims, but it does happen. It happens to males. It happens to, especially in the LGBTQ community. It doesn't discriminate, for sure. So what we teach is for both sides. It doesn't necessarily just specifically focus on women. But yeah, I mean, it's really all about, like you said, the emotional. And I believe with everything that, all my training and stuff that I've seen, that the mental, the emotional, the verbal abuse is way worse than the physical. Physical goes away quickly. Mental can stay around for a really, really long time, and it's a lot harder to detect, and it takes a lot longer period of time to detect. And that happens way more than the physical nowadays, especially.
I love the idea that you talk to hairdressers, because they're able to talk, and the person is like you were talking earlier today, that they're safe. They feel safe talking about something, and that's what it's all about.
Right.
So, what other avenues have you gotten like that can reach out to somebody that is feeling the unhealthy relationship type thing? What other avenues do they have to be able to feel safe to who they can talk to? That's what it's all about, right? I mean, they got to be able to talk before anything happens.
Right, right, and that's one of the big things that we teach, especially to like hairdressers, is how to respond, because a lot of us, you know, and I know I'm guilty of this before too. It's like you want to maybe shake somebody that's in the relationship that you know they're in an abusive relationship and they just don't leave, and you're like, why can't you leave, you know? And it's really not that easy. Statistics show that the victim will leave 7-8 times, leave and go back and leave and go back before they actually leave for good. And there's multiple reasons for that. But, you know, we definitely want to give people, you know, especially when I talk to these hairdressers, you know, ways that they can talk to the victims.